Hello everyone, welcome back to Metis IS. This is Sonia Gupta and today we are going to again continue with our Panchayati Raj series. Till now what we have done is we have done about the idea of Panchayati Raj, why it was bought, what were the historical evolution, all the committees we have done, and then we moved on to the 73rd Constitutional Amendment Act. Right. So we have done half of the 73rd Constitutional Amendment Act where we have seen that when it was enacted, when it was implemented, what all functional items were devolved, what all powers were devolved. If you have not watched the previous parts, I would request you to watch them so that you have better clarity on the topic that what we are doing today. Then we have seen that there are three-tier structure in the Panchayati Raj. We have seen the composition, how it is formed, the three-tier structure where the lowest level is at village level, then intermediate level, and then district level. And intermediate level is not required or may be omitted if the population is less than 20 lakh. Direct democratic elections are to be happening at all the places, all the levels, and the chairperson can be elected indirectly. The time period is, the tenure is 5 years. We have seen that. We have discussed 243A, Article 243A, that is for establishment of Gram Sabha. Then 243C, which is regarding composition. Just now we have seen the composition and the structure. And 243D is regarding the reservation, where it is said that as per population, a reservation for SC and ST should be made available, and for women it is 1/3 at horizontal level, means all the categories, within all the categories women should get 1/3 reservation. Then 243G is regarding the powers and authority. So we have done this. We have done Article 243A, B, C, D and E. We have also done F in the previous part. So in detail, if I want you to remember this, so for Gram Sabha, what is the function? That it is the assembly of the people who are the electors, registered voters, and the idea behind this is direct democracy. It leads to participatory democracy, and citizens are directly engaged in decision making process. If citizens are directly engaged in decision making process, then what happens is their role becomes very important in oversight function, because they review the functioning of panchayat, the executives, that is the panch and sarpanches, and then they can play a very important role in planning. Why planning? Because they are the one who are on the ground, who are actually facing the issues, and who are the agents of change then, right? So identification of problem is the main issue in the villages, so they can help in identifying the issue, and they can also bring or help in bringing the regional solution to the problem. Moreover, they can also help in conflict resolution, because higher levels, they do not know what is the problem, what are the conflicts happening. So if you have seen the Panchayat series on Amazon, so it is very clear that in villages also there are certain conflicts, and when Gram Sabha is there, when people discuss, so when it acts like a deliberative body, they will be able to resolve the conflicts at the local level, so that they do not emerge as a very big conflict. So democracy in that case helps you bring the harmony also, right? So then for inclusive representation, we have seen that for reservation was given to SC/STs based on their population proportion. 1/3 seat has been given to women. Regarding backward classes, if state government feel, state legislature feel that they want to give reservation, additional reservation, they can do that. So it was the voluntary function, rather these were the obligatory functions, right? Next, how the electoral administrative framework works. We have seen that direct election has to take place at all the three levels. The tenure is 5 years, and if the elections are dissolved, are to be dissolved in 5 years, then before completion of 5 years, fresh election has to take place. And if elections or if the dissolution of panchayat takes place before 6 months of the term ending, from the duration of term ending, then election has to take place and the fresh panchayat will be working only for the remaining period. And if the time period between the dissolution and the new election is less than 6 months, then no need of fresh elections in that case. Okay. So this is to maintain the synchronization in the election process throughout the state. For election, we have State Election Commission. For finances, we have State Finance Commission. Term is, for the Finance Commission, is 5 year. We have seen State Election Commission is headed by Election Commissioner, and their function is to superintend, direct and control the elections, and moreover, he is appointed by governor. He has the same powers as the state high court judge, means he cannot be removed. He can be removed by the president upon the recommendations of parliament. You must know that high court judges are removed through Judges Inquiry Act, right? So that is the same process. Why it is done? To provide independence to the functioning of, or to the institution of, State Election Commission, so that it can work freely for free and fair elections. So what is the process? That SEC, that is State Election Commission, will announce the elections. After announcement, they will register the voter and electoral rolls will be prepared. Then nominations, candidates will file their nominations, they'll file their papers, voting will be done, and after the voting is done, the result will be declared. Now, there is another one thing I would like to add here, the other provisions as well. Now, what happens if there are certain issues with the elections? So, if there are certain issues with constituency delimitation in the election or seat allocation may, what differences or what issues can erupt is, for example, if there is certain reserved seat for women, so they cannot question why this seat is reserved, why not other seat is reserved. So courts cannot interfere in this matter, and if there are electoral matters, they have to be like they can be questioned, but election petition has to be filed to the authority. Okay, so electoral matters, there will be a authority where election petition has to be put, and state legislature will be determining that process, the manner in which election petition will be happening. So this article I am linking with the electoral process. So here we have done the disqualification. We have done that all the state legislature will determine all the disqualifications, but age here is 21 years, unlike for Lok Sabha the age is 25 years, right? So we have seen all these parts. Now we have to move to the next part, that is the power, authority and responsibility. So if you see all these articles clearly, so initial articles are regarding the composition and the structure. Till here it is composition and structure. Then is about powers, and then is about the finances or the accounts related issue. Then is about where all these will be applied or not applied. These two are about elections, right? So this is how these articles are arranged. So moving on to the next topic of powers and responsibilities of PRI. So here also in this case we see that state legislatures are the one that determine, or through law they determine, that what authority shall be vested with the panchayats. So major empowerment has to be done in economic development and social justice. So the major function which panchayats has to endow with are that they have to prepare plans for economic development and social justice, and for this they have been given 29 subjects, and these subjects are mentioned in the 11th schedule. We have already discussed in 7th schedule we have subjects mentioned for union and state and even concurrent list. For panchayats we have mentioned it in 11th schedule. So 11th schedule along with article 243G says what are the powers of Gram Panchayat. So what are the powers of Gram Panchayat are mentioned, listed in 11th schedule. So together they determine what are the powers and authorities of Gram Panchayat. So there are 29 subjects. Majorly, if you see that the major function is economic development and social justice. So you can on your own even guess what kind of topics will be given or subjects will be given with Gram Panchayat. So for economic development, if you see clearly that in rural areas, so when Panchayat we talk about rural areas, and in rural areas major economic part is regarding the agriculture and non-farm activities, not much of industries but agriculture, non-farm activities. Apart from that, they need basic infrastructure for this. So can you imagine that these three must be there in these subjects? Apart from economic development, social justice, what all will be there in social justice? So there will be social welfare. How can you do welfare? So there should be health, there should be education. These two be the criteria. Another thing which can be, which is to be done here is that in rural areas there is issue of poverty also, right? So all these functions will be given. So as I said, if you determine major categories, so major categories mein first category is agriculture, that is agriculture and rural development. In this, land improvement will be there, agriculture extension will be there. What is agriculture extension, by the way? So I want all of you people who are watching this to answer in the comment box that what is agriculture extension. Then in the next class I'll be telling you what is agriculture extension. I want to see how many of you know what is agriculture extension. Okay, you might have also read it in the economics part. Okay, so land improvement is one, agriculture extension is one, animal husbandry, fisheries and rural housing. Next, for infrastructure, you have roads, bridges, ferries, waterways, rural electrification, non-conventional energy sources. Then social welfare में health, sanitation, family welfare, women and child development you want to do here, and poverty alleviation programs. So if you see Article 243G along with 11th schedule determines the functions of the Gram Panchayat. Here initially it's more about agriculture, agriculture extension services, land improvement, irrigation facilities, animal husbandry, fisheries. So integrated, complete integrated agriculture services are provided. Then on industrial level, what is there? Small scale industries, food industries, khadi village, cottage industries. Then infrastructure mein you should have rural housing, drinking water, fuel and fodder, roads, electrification, energy sources, these. Then for social welfare you will have education mein you have these four. Then again for new economic activities and cultural activities, markets and fair, health may, then again you have health, and then for poverty, food. So that all the services, since India is a welfare state, our government is endowed with or there is a mandate that government has to provide basic welfare services to the people, and identification of those beneficiaries, providing them on the ground will be best done by these gram panchayats because they are actually working on the ground. So from here you can also tell that what all services has to be given. Yes, they should be given, right? These services must have been devolved to panchayats. Now other provisions of panchayats apart from this is, so we have seen till now what we have seen. We have why I am repeating again and again is so that you understand all the provisions of the 73rd Constitution Amendment Act. It should not be like ki ma'am, I don't know the provisions or I'm facing trouble in remembering all the provisions. The provisions are very easy. First you have idea. I told you idea in the first class. Then based on the idea you make a structure, and we have seen the structure and composition. This is structure and composition part, right? Structure and composition part. Then based on this idea you want to determine the composition, because idea said democratic governance, and in democratic governance you will make it truly democratic. How you will make it truly democratic? By inclusivity, you gave reservation, etc. Then you'll determine what functions they will do. For functions, you have to determine what powers they will possess. So after structure and composition, you will have powers, and they cannot do anything unless they have funds in their hands, finances in their hands. So next article should be for finances, right? That they must have power to impose taxes, funds, so that they can sustain their functions. They can continuously work independently based on the requirement at the ground level rather than depending upon the higher authorities, right? So for finance, they must also get finances from upper levels, that is the state and the union. Now once the expenditure has been done, so we have to, for funds we have two sections: revenue means from where they will get the finances, and then expenses. So once they get revenue, so we have mentioned two sources of revenue that they can get their own, they can also get from the higher levels. Then after this we'll see expenses. So once they get revenue, they'll spend it. Now these expenditure again must be democratic, transparent. They must be audited so that corruption do not take place. So the next article is about audit of accounts, that how the accounts will be maintained, how auditing process will be taking place. Now for expenses, they have auditing of these expenses, audits. They have a provision which says that state legislature will determine the process. Means every state will have their own, they can determine their own process, that how auditing will be done, right? So these are the article. Now moving on, we have seen how elections will be done. Next happens that whether this complete functions, these complete features or the provision should be applied everywhere or in some sections. Now why does this question arise? Because already in 5th and 6th schedule you have given some kind of autonomy or some kind of protection to tribal people. Under 5th schedule you say it is scheduled area, and in 6th schedule you have tribal areas. In tribal areas you have tribal advisory council which have much more autonomy, right? These are specifically in northeastern states. Scheduled areas are in the 10 states, right? So you have already given some kind of protection to tribal areas. So where all these have to be applied? Now in states, again listen to me carefully, that when you are saying you want to devolve power from union to panchayats. Now this amendment, 73rd amendment, deals with the devolution from state to panchayat. So means within state, the panchayats which are coming within states, they will be getting certain functions from the state. But what about union territories? They are directly under the control of union. So means union territories are under the control of union. They do not have state government. So from where they will be getting devolution of power? Directly from the union. So there should be a separate legal provision for it. Next question comes, what happens to these 5th and 6th schedule areas? So whether they will be applying here or not. Next part this. And what happens to the current existing panchayats which are already existing in state? You want another article for that also? Am I making sense? That devolution has to take place from state to panchayat. All these provisions are from state to panchayat, the third level, local self-government level. But what happens to UTs which are under the control of union? So we have to deal with that. What happens where already there is autonomy under 5th and 6th schedule? What happens to those areas? And then what happens to those panchayats which are already in existence? in the states. So these three articles deals with that where all it will be applying. So if we go in detail, in UTs, it was said because it is directly under the control of union government, the president may extend because states are not there. So states legislature is not there. So who will make the law? So here president may extend, and as you know that president has to work on aid and advice of Council of Ministers headed by Prime Minister. Understood this part? Clear? Right. Next, coming to exemptions. So I said under fifth and sixth schedule already there is certain kind of autonomy which will be doing in the later chapters. So exemption will be given in those areas where already these autonomy are there. But later in fifth scheduled areas, this was extended and it was called as PESA Act. Panchayats extension to scheduled areas. So Panchayats extension to scheduled areas. Name only says that this act was later extended to scheduled areas. It was later extended to scheduled areas. So at the time when the act was made, at that time it was not extended, but when it was extended by a separate act made in 1996, and the act name is PESA 1996, where the same amendment was also applied to scheduled areas. So at that time it was exempted, but later on scheduled areas were added. Okay. Next is what happens to existing panchayats. So previous panchayats which were already there, they will be valid only for 1 year. Means after 1 year they have to be dissolved, and the fresh panchayats under the 73rd Amendment Act has to be made. So these are the provisions of. In the previous part we have also seen that under 73rd Amendment Act there were certain provisions which were compulsory and voluntary. So I have made a separate slide for listing all these provisions. So I said that Gram Sabha has to be made, Panchayats has to be made at all levels, but the functioning, the empowerment of Gram Sabha is a voluntary function. It's a voluntary provision. Why? Because depending upon the regional situation, depending upon the regional conditions, they have to be made. Next, direct elections for all panchayats, but the procedure for chairperson election was made flexible. Reservation for SC, STs and women were given, but for representation of parliamentarians and the state legislature member was voluntary provision. Apart from that, reservation for backward classes was also voluntary provision depending upon the states. Next, tenure was 5 years. State Election Commission was set up. State Finance Commission was set up. Here, what extra voluntary provision was there, that what all powers have to be devolved. And we see here, at that time it was said, because even states were reluctant to give the power, even the administration, the permanent executives which are present at the district level, they were also, so they made it a voluntary provision. Apart from that, there was also one reason, that regional condition has to be taken in mind while devolving the power. But over the period of time, this provision has created lots of issues. And what we see, that fully devolution of power has not made, because this was a voluntary provision. So the provision which was made flexible and was thought that states will devolve, ultimately states ended up in not devolving. So it means somewhere these provisions which were compulsory, which were mandatory, they led to making of panchayats. Means you have a structure of panchayat in villages, but these panchayats are not fully functional, fully independent. Why? Because actual power has not been devolved. So substantive power has not been devolved. For namesake, they are present, their election has to take place, but when it comes to functioning, they are again dependent upon the states. For actual functioning, they are dependent upon the states. So we'll see in later classes how these compulsory and voluntary provisions led to the major issue which we are facing in panchayats today. Okay. So this part we have done. In the next section, we'll be studying about the finances, from where the finances comes for the panchayat, what are the provisions, what are the challenges it is facing, and then we'll go to overall challenges which the panchayats are facing. So I've just given introduction to it, but we'll be going in very detail in the next part. Thank you so much.